Now, Quality of Life survey shows that SA's major urban centres are grappling with a critical water crisis. This on the back of frequent outages in major cities and metros. For more on this, Director of Research at the Gauteng City Region Observatory, Graeme Gotz, joins me live. Graeme, good morning. We really appreciate your time here on eNCA today. Before we get to some of the key findings of this research, talk to me about how the Pulse of the Province survey was conducted.
Thanks very much, Jenna Lee, for the opportunity to talk to you today. So just to give a quick indication of what the Quality of Life survey is all about, we have run a survey every 2 to 3 years since 2009, and this is in fact the 7th iteration of the survey. So it's a survey that has for the last 15 years given an extraordinarily detailed look into the lives, the attitudes, the opinions, the living circumstances and socio-economic conditions of residents also of Gauteng. So the survey, this iteration of the survey, the 7th survey, was conducted, fieldwork started in late August of 2023, and fieldwork ran up until mid-April of 2024. And we interviewed 13,795 respondents, and that makes it one of the largest social attitude surveys, certainly in South Africa, but in many other places elsewhere in the world that we know.
And then, Graeme, what were some of the key findings of this Quality of Life survey regarding the water crisis in some of the major urban areas in the country?
Yeah, so just to emphasize that this is a survey that's focused on Gauteng, but of course, because it's focused on the heartland of our country, it will of course speak to conditions that are present in many other parts of the country as well. So there's a lot of questions in the survey on infrastructure. And of course, water is one of the key concerns of a lot of people. And we're seeing some of what we already know in terms of water infrastructure breakdowns play out in the data. So just to give you a quick indication of some of the results, we find that overall access to decent quality water services in terms of water infrastructure connections has basically been maintained, which is great. So 92% of respondents say they've got access to piped water in their dwelling or in their yard, but the quality of that water has declined. So last time we ran the survey, 2020-21, remember it runs every 2 to 3 years, 75% said their water is always clean. This time around, it's down to 60%. That's a massive 15 percentage point decline. And similarly, the percentage saying that they're satisfied with water has come down from 84% all the way down to 75%. And then for Gauteng, the big crisis is going to be water interruptions and everything that goes with that. So the ability for contaminants to get into the system, which makes water unclean, etc. So a couple of years ago, the last time we ran the survey, 24% were saying that they had seen water interruptions weekly or a couple of times a month. It's pretty much doubled to 38%, saying that they're seeing weekly or a couple of times a month water interruptions.
Then another key finding that the survey is highlighting, Graeme, is the worsening inequality. I'm taking a look at that now. What is contributing to that growing divide that we're seeing within Gauteng?
Yeah, so there's poverty and there's inequality. And what we're seeing is that there's a slight improvement since the last survey in terms of measured poverty. So very interestingly, last time around, 23% of our households were measured to be below the food poverty line. And that's come down slightly. 16% are now saying that they're in poverty, in absolute poverty, food poverty line. But that's no better than it was in the pre-COVID years. That's just us coming out of the COVID crisis and seeing a little bit of improvement. But inequality remains staggeringly high. And the best way to describe this is in terms of the differences between the different racial groups, in terms of things that that we would say represent a household's ability to protect against risk, to put their kids through university, through school and university, etc., etc., etc. So just to give you an indication, using some of the data that we've got easily at hand, this time around 77% of Africans say none of the major assets in our household are insured, compared to 19% of whites. Okay, so that huge disjuncture between different parts of the population. 53% of Africans say they live day to day, 36% of whites do. 58% say we just can't get ahead no matter how hard we try, of Africans, 42% for whites, and so on. So these huge racial disparities in our society continue to exist. And of course, there's many other ways to cut the data. We can cut it according to gender, we can cut it according to different income groups, and you can see those disparities play out in a number of different ways.
And then, Graeme, in conclusion, the Gauteng provincial government is part of this partnership through which the research was conducted, and I understand SALGA as well. A lot of the issues highlighted by these findings can be placed at the door of service delivery, for instance. What has been Gauteng government's response to these findings, and how can they use these findings to better service delivery?
So just to explain that the Gauteng City Region Observatory is a partnership. It's part funded by provincial government, but it's also based in 2 universities, and the whole enterprise is meant to set up a relatively independent base from which this kind of valuable primary information can be generated. So this is speaking to government rather than the voice of government. What we've done is we've taken the pulse of the province by interviewing 14,000 respondents across the province, and we're transmitting that as facts and figures to government to say, this is what your people are saying to you. And the results, unfortunately, are not good for government. I'm not saying that government hasn't tried. We're seeing a situation where last time we ran the survey, 23% were on a social relief and distress grant. This time around, 33% on the 32% on a social relief and distress grant. So the social safety net is expanding. But households are in crisis, and they're taking the bundle of frustrations that they have and they're projecting it at government. So just illustratively, we see a situation where satisfaction with provincial government, it was going up in the surveys conducted in 2013, 14, 15, 16, and 17, 18. It was going up, and it was about 44%. It's not high, but it's improving. Under COVID, it came down to 29% satisfied with provincial government, and this time around, only 22% are satisfied with provincial government. There's something there that government really needs to know about. Of all the various dimensions of our survey, we measure in health, we measure in safety, which is a big concern, etc., etc. You're seeing the government dimension, satisfaction with government dimension decline the most.
Graeme, thank you so much for giving us more insight. That was Graeme Gotz of the Gauteng City Region Observatory, giving us insights into their quality of life survey. Residents of Gauteng not very happy with the quality of life. It'll be interesting to see how the Gauteng government would be using these findings to better the lives of its citizens. It's now 35 minutes.